Hello, everybody, and welcome to Automated, a podcast about technology. My name is Cody, and I'm happy to be back for number 3. We're going to talk about the downsides of the smart home products. And cool stuff like that. So before we get too far into it, we're now available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube and most of the other places that you can find podcasts. I'm pretty excited about that. If you could, go around and leave a review if you feel like that's something you want to do, that would be cool. Let's see here. Number 3, we're going to talk about some of the negative things, but we're probably going to throw in some creative solutions and explain why some of these things might be considered negative. And if you haven't listened to 1 and 2, that's something that maybe you might want to do before you give this one a listen, because I don't want to throw anybody off and, inspire somebody to not want to do a smart house because of this. This definitely isn't the episode you want to listen to first. I just want to throw that out. Yeah, I just got a list here. There's not a lot of words on it. There's 6 things that I just want to touch on and make sure that I hit. These are just the 6 things to me that I'm like, you know what? That's something that I feel like somebody would want to know. And I'm going to sit here and talk about it. And the first one is location-based triggers. They're not all what you are expecting, There's some stuff that they're not doing for safety reasons. Safety and security, and it's okay in my opinion. For example, my Alexa system won't unlock any of my doors, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm okay with using just the app that controls the device instead of having multiple different apps going different ways. But that's one of the things that I noticed at the beginning when I was hooking everything up, was that some location triggers are unable to do certain things, like open garage doors, unlock doors. There's different manufacturers that kind of work a little bit differently that, we'll kind of get into if I ever do a review on a product. We'll talk specifically about it, but that's just something to keep in mind with your system as you're building it. You just want to pay attention to what kind of control you want to have, of course, before you buy your stuff. And you kind of want to think, okay, am I going to be able to do whatever? Am I going to be able to open this door this way? Am I going to be is that something I need to think about a little bit longer before I make this purchase, or what? So that was one of the negative downsides for me, was some of the location-based triggers can't do specific things, but I think that there's good reasons for it. Most of the things that you're limited on, there's usually a really good reason behind why it's like that. That's just because, Amazon doesn't want to be responsible for sending an unlock trigger to another product if it wasn't meant to, so they're just not even going to let that be an option with specific products. So, and that could just be a relationship between those two manufacturers, between Amazon and, for August. Maybe that's something that they don't want to talk about, or that they don't want to even occupy the idea of. Maybe there's another lock producer that you can make that connection. And, it depends on which way you're going between manufacturers, if that's going to be a negative thing for you. For me, that was one of the negative things, and you'll probably find similar things to that when you're building your smart house. The next one is internet connectivity. I had a day, it was an evening a couple weeks ago when the electricity went out at my house, and it was out until about 3 p.m. the next day, and it was interesting. It's like going back in time a little bit. I would say that everybody's considering the smart house life part of the future, and when you're there and the electricity goes out, you kind of have to you're improvising a little bit because there's certain things that you notice that affect the way that you're doing things with no internet. Um, for me, like I have a lot of light bulbs, and I'll get into that on the next little bullet point. I have a lot of screw-in light bulbs, and my light switches aren't smart enabled, so it's all up to the light bulb to make that data transmission to turn on and turn off over the internet. So without the internet, I can't control those products, and I'm pretty much sitting in the corner going, how? And it's kind of fun, I guess. It's kind of like survival. Like you go into survival mode, you're like, you know what? We'll have internet again, and everything's gonna be fine eventually. But for now, we just don't have internet. So that's one of the downsides is internet connectivity. Whenever you lose that, I mean, obviously, all these products, like we talked about in number 2, all those products are connected to the internet, and that's the only way that they're at their 100% functionality. So that's one of the things where I pretty much have gotten to the point where I'm like, if there's internet, good. If not, then survival mode. And it's not hardcore survival mode. You're just sitting back laughing at yourself because you can't turn your lights on and off, which is, I guess it's kind of funny. It's just one of those things you kind of have to expect when you get into something that relies on the internet. And I think that until we have internet connection that's impeccable and unable to be interrupted, that's always going to be a byproduct of a smart house. So I'm okay with it. I just kind of laugh at it. But that's one of the downsides that you just have to be aware of, as you're getting into it. And it's just one of them things. The third one that I wrote down that it was the third thing that I noticed was the neutral wires on light switches. In most of the homes in America, I would say, or at least most of the homes around my area that I've experienced, are all pretty much sometimes a little bit older than about 10, 20 years. And when you get into houses that are, up in that age and older, you find some like electrical standards that weren't really, they were safe. Everything was fine. It's kind of weird. But there's a way that people used to wire in fixtures and light switches in houses that's just kind of... I'm not an electrician. I'm not in the industry every day, so an electrician could probably hear this and say, what are you talking about? You're an idiot. And that's fine. That's what the internet's for. But the way they used to run power, it was cheaper, quicker, easier when they were running these wires to just run power from the breaker panel in your house straight to the fixture or wherever the hot wire is coming from. They'd go straight to the fixture, and then they would just take one wire and go from there down to the switch. And when they do that, they use the black wire, which anybody that knows anything about electricity, that's always the hot wire, and then the white wire as like a switch return. So they, instead of running a wire to the switch and then running another wire from the switch to the light, they just ran one wire to the light, and then later on when they put the switch in, they'd run that wire real quick, put the switch in, and they just use that hot wire and the white wire, the black and white wire, as a switch wire basically, and then electricity would come down from the fixture to the switch, and then the switch would turn on, and then that would send power back up the other wire. Now the problem with that when it comes to smart home switches and switching over to a smart switch is that we need the neutral wire, the white wire, to complete the electrical circuit for the product to power on and connect to Wi-Fi. So anything that connects to Wi-Fi, if it's not battery powered, you're gonna have to have power the hot wire and the neutral wire. So that's something that you run into when you're working in these houses that have that. It's not really an issue, but it just has that circumstance. Something you have to work with. And the way that I solved it, like I said a minute ago, was instead of putting a bunch of switches in that you had control of, I just put bulbs in. So that was way easier than going through and figuring out how I could get a neutral wire and how I was going to power these switches. So I just put bulbs in everywhere. And that was so much easier, and it's kind of cheaper. The downside is you have to buy a smart bulb for every socket that there's a bulb in. So if you have a chandelier or a ceiling fan with 4 lights on it, instead of buying one switch, you have to buy 4 lights. So I guess that's where it gets a little bit more expensive, but that's just one of those things I had to work with. And plus, I rent my house, so I can't really like do a lot of construction. So the light bulbs were the easiest, most effective way to get all my lighting on Wi-Fi and controllable. But yeah, that was one of the downsides when it came to doing that and making that decision, was if I had to go with switches or light bulbs. And that's something that you'll have to do too. If you have an electrician friend that can come over and tell you if you have a neutral wire at all of your switch locations, if you're not comfortable with being able to check that out yourself, then that's something that you'd have to check on. That's what's going to determine if you're buying bulbs or switches. It's, there's disadvantages to both. To the bulbs, you don't have the switch anymore. So if the internet goes out, like that day I was talking about, I didn't have an internet connection. I wasn't able to power on or off my bulbs with anything, not even a physical switch at the wall. I could cut the power with the little switch, and I got the little covers on there to keep me from hitting it all the time, because I need them to stay powered on all the time so they can stay connected to Wi-Fi. So I could go under the cover and flip the switch, and that would turn the power off and then back on, but that kind of resets the bulb. It has to reconnect to Wi-Fi, and you sort of have control over the light output, but it's one of those things that you just kind of have to deal with it. If you're not willing to go and redo your electrical stuff to get your neutral wire, then the bulbs is just one of those compromises you have to make, and I made it, so it's no big deal. The downside to the switches is that, of course, you have to have the neutral wires, and I would say probably 60 to 70% of the folks out there that are putting switches in, you're not going to be able to find a neutral wire to use. So that's kind of in a roundabout sort of way that all that kind of tied in together, the internet connectivity and the switches with the neutral wire. That was one of the downsides, like the first biggest one that I saw that I was like, wow, that's something that, that's going to determine how I spend a lot of my money on my smart house stuff, and the budget that you lay out for yourself over time of all the products that you're going to buy, because that's kind of something you have to do so you're not just out spending thousands of dollars on smart house products, because that's pretty easy to do with the amount of stuff out there that you can buy. The next one that I wrote down was multiple users, and I noticed this. I added this to the list when I mentioned this example in number 2. When I had somebody over at my house, they walked outside to their car, came back inside, and the Ring motion camera triggered motion, and the motion command was sent. So then my Amazon Echo setup was like, oh, okay, cool. Motion at the camera. I'm going to lock the door now. I had that set up to lock the door. Not unlock the door. You can't unlock the door. But to lock the door. And that got weird for them because they walked outside, and 20 seconds later they're back at the door to come back inside and it's locked. Like, what are you doing to me? You locked me outside. You weren't even over here. How'd you lock the door? So that was one of the things that I noticed. I had to go in. I had to edit that routine out and adapt that to multiple people and figure out what I needed to do. So basically, I just disabled that whole locking the door thing because that's kind of silly. But that's something that you'll have to pay attention to when you have multiple users using a system. And also it comes to the voice recognition part. Everybody's got a different voice. And these systems are listening and learning about everybody's voice. And if you have it set up to optimize for just your voice and somebody else comes in and they have like a different accent or something, then they may not have as much success as you on your house system. And the other thing with multiple users that it's just like a generic weird thing that's going to happen is nobody's used to a smart house. Nobody's accustomed to having to talk to the lights. People have only seen that in movies and TV shows and from Hollywood. Now that's able to be real life in everybody's house. That's what I'm saying. So you're still going to have some folks coming in that might walk in your front door and say, if you're not home and you have a guest coming over to let your dog out or something, you're going to have people coming in your house going, none of these light switches work, and it's dark, and I can't, nothing works. I can't turn anything on. Are you going to put signs up in your house that guide other users to use your house, to like house guests to come over and, be able to navigate what's going on inside of your house with all your products and devices and the system that you've designed for yourself? Are you going to have like a sign that says, hey, just say, Alexa, turn on all the lights or whatever? And there you go, everybody. I just turned your lights on for you. There's a way that we can get around that, but it's really difficult for me to get there, because obviously I use that same voice assistant in my house. So how can I? I'm going to talk about this probably every episode. I think that most of the commercials enunciate it like Lexa. That's how they say it. They don't say the So maybe I'll try to start doing that. I don't know if I'll be able to. I probably won't be able to, because by instinct I just say both. But anyways, man, I got off there. Oh yeah, turn on the lights on. Yeah, how are your people going to come in and use your house? That's something that's going to be a downside, is figuring out how to help people navigate. Or is that just part of the mystery? Is that just what is going to make everyone's house their house? Like, without it being just walls? Is the programming that you have designed for you, is that just going to be what your house is? Or are you going to have your house set up for you and then for other people? It's like, do you put do you put signs that just navigate every spot in the house? You go through and put the thought into it and say, okay, if somebody's standing here, they might need to turn the lights on. Maybe they need to turn on the toaster, if you have a toaster that's turned on by Alexa. What if somebody needs to try to figure out how to use my smart oven? How's that going to work? But anyways, building your house for multiple users, that's going to be it's going to be a task. But you know what? I think it's going to be fun for people. I think that's what it's really going to be. Figuring out how to navigate the world of what's going on. And I think that it'll help people learn about how they use their stuff, and it'll help people learn about how other people use their stuff too. Yeah, that's multiple users. There's going to be some downsides to it when it comes to voice recognition and multiple people needing to use the house, and then simply the functions of your house when people are trying to use it when it's not designed for more than one versions of you at a time, or whatever, just without guests and stuff. Why does he always say Hasn't he ever been on the radio before? Company relationships. That one's kind of important. Kind of got into that in episode 2, number 2, when we were talking about how it works. We were saying that those businesses all have partnerships, and they've crafted these paths of data that can travel across these devices. They've spent the time making these partnerships, so now you have a working relationship, a business relationship that has to exist for your products to work. That's kind of an interesting twist on things. So, like, for example, I found there's a Twitter account. I'm not going to say the name. There's a Twitter account. If you go follow my Twitter, I'll retweet it tonight. A couple of their tweets. You can go check them out. They have all sorts of hilarious stuff of random things happening to people's smart house products and silly stuff that, quite frankly, shouldn't happen. But it's a pretty funny account, and I pulled this from it the other day. And It's an Insignia smart home products that were made by Insignia. They're an electronics company. They've made TVs, and I'm sure they've made all sorts of other products that are in all sorts of other pieces of technology that we use every day. And the app that controls their Insignia products sent a notification to this user, and it says on November 6, 2019, this app and the Insignia products that use it will no longer be available. If you have an Insignia Connect product, you might be eligible for a Best Buy gift card. So it's like, here you go. You bought this great product to turn the lights on in your house or to do whatever inside of your house. And you know what? We decided to turn that computer off and plug it in somewhere else. So your stuff's not going to work anymore. You're not going to be able to use it. Here, we might be able to give you a Best Buy gift card. That's basically what they did to these people. So I don't want to, again, freak anybody out about that possibility. I think that if you stick with the bigger companies and you pay attention to the product lines and how old the product line is that you're buying, how long it looks like it's been in manufacturing, which it's not going to be very long, but I think that if you look at specific companies' history and kind of observe how they carry themselves and sell products, I think that you'll be able to gauge if you're going to be safe buying a product or not. Like, and then you kind of have to go, am I going to buy lighting equipment from a technology company, or am I going to buy lighting equipment with technology enabled from a lighting company? You see what I'm saying there? You kind of like the companies that make, like Philips Hue, they're not going to just stop supporting their lights because that is their business, is lights. They're heavily invested in keeping their technology working for their lights because they're a lighting company. They're not a technology company. Technology companies just throw stuff out the window most of the time when they want to get rid of something and start with something new. But I think that if you stay close to the big four that are really trying to get all these people invested into their system, I think that that's going to be pretty consistent through time as we go on. But yeah, that's one thing that you kind of have to pay attention to is the relationship of the companies, and if they're going to stop working with your products or stop working with other companies that are offering control of the products, you have to determine if the company that you're going to buy, if you can trust them, and fun stuff like that. Now, speaking of trusting companies, that leads us into the last one, the big one. It's kind of a big deal. How many has that been? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6. That's what I thought. Big tech, big data. That's number 7. That's the most recent. It's the craziest one. That's it's a crazy world. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just something to pay attention to. There's a lot of stuff happening with policy making and regulation that protects or doesn't protect the data that we own. And when I say the data that we own, I mean the database that is connected to each one of your devices. When you come in and turn your light on, like we were saying in number 2, there we add another row to that database that says, it updates the status of that product so that technically that company knows what that product is doing. Now, it's the great debate is, are people just like looking at this and saying, oh, he turned his lamp on. I don't think that's what's really happening. And I'm just an idiot. I don't know what's going on in these offices and stuff, but I'm just looking at this realistically and saying that there's however many people in the world that are able to buy these products, and however many of these products that these people are making. There's not a team in charge of looking at your one device's existence and how it functions, and we're going to figure out how to hack your life just by the way that you turn your lamp on. I don't think that's really the case. I think that more realistically what's going on is we have a massive algorithm that's programmed to reference all sorts of different data points that we're all contributing to. And those algorithms teach us things. They teach, and when I say us, I mean the internet as like a society, you know? Everybody together, all this data compiled together, we're able to say, oh, well, this type of data trend is normally related to this type of situation. That's what I'm saying. These algorithms are going to be built to watch how we use this stuff, and it will record that data, and that could help multiple different things. Could tell us how data usage. It could tell us about electricity consumption. It could tell us stuff about, and I'm not saying that there's a website that you can go to right now and find this information. I'm just saying you will be contributing to something that is able to be referenced. And the thing is there's really no limit to what it can be referenced to. That's like the great debate right now. You know, are people able to access that information and use it for political gain, financial gain? Like, are we building a commercial empire that capitalizes on the data that we're able to reference from thousands of people's products they use in their house? That's just something you have to know, that, you know, that's what they're doing with this data is setting it up to where it's able to be referenced. And every time that we sign up for an account with our email address and scroll down all these different bullet points and long sentences and paragraphs, we scroll to the bottom and we click I agree and give me my account. I want to log in. You know, we don't care about saying, show me what data you're saving, where it's going, and what study it's going to be a part of, and how I'm going to influence how the world works. Nobody ever sees that and says that. I guarantee you 97% of the people that sign up for things don't read the terms of service. And it's the internet, so I'm allowed to make a claim like that with no fact. So, you know, it's just, that's something you have to be aware of, is the big data and big tech. I'm going to talk about big tech a lot on this show. Not today, of course, because it's a lot, and I'm, you know, not trying to make everything crazy for everybody. But, you know, soon I'll get into it. It's just one of those things. You just have to understand that everybody's creating this data, like, matrix empire thing that we're able to use on the internet, and you're probably going to be contributing to that with smart home products, whether that's your voice assistant and your voice recognition recording the way, not necessarily the words that you're saying as sentences and in context of what you're saying, but the individual words down to the way that you're articulating, like the dynamics of your voice. The computers are paying attention to how we're saying stuff and learning about the different ways that we make variations in our voice, and we're going to be able to make a map of accents and say, here, this is what accents look like across the country. This is what type of grammatical scenarios that these people are living in every day here, and that's the same thing over here. That kind of stuff is going to be able to be looked at now because we all have these devices that we talk to, and when we click agree, it's going to record those words and save it and learn from it with these big AI machine learning bots that everybody's making. And when I say everybody, I mean like the big couple that are getting into AI and machine learning. There's actually quite a few companies out there. Google's working on a quantum computer with this just insane processing ability to and it basically it'll be programmed to be able to learn like a human. You know, there's going to be there's teams of people dedicated to creating a decision-making robot with Google and with a couple other companies, to where these products are able to reference the data that we're contributing to, or these robots. And by robots, I mean it's just a room full of racks with servers, and they're all connected in fancy ways that make it super quick and enable fast data transmission and processing. And that type of machine is what is going to reference the data that's created by what we are able to give to it. And, if you guys watched Eagle Eye, the big robot computer that had the thing that was making all the decisions and stuff, kind of like that, but except a realistic version, like not complete terror the day that it started. And it's one of those things that you just have to keep track of. You just have to remember that that's kind of what's going on with data. And I think that as time goes on, there will be regulation and policy that's put into play that will, it'll kind of protect us. I think that usually policy is usually pretty far behind when it comes to technology, and it's always enabled once you're in recovery mode. But I think that as we move forward and move on, I don't think that these companies are trying to just end the world with our data. Like, Google isn't making a computer that's just going to be designed to end the world. That's out of a movie. So you kind of have to take all that. I mean, those are really good stories and they're really good movies that are played out and play out that story. But I think that that's probably the most common perception of what's going to happen when there's an AI learning bot that learns from all the data that we contribute to. But it's one of those things that you just have to understand that it's happening. And my opinion might change on it soon. If there's weird things that we discover, that we learn that a couple companies aren't playing well with it, and maybe it's something that we should care about a little bit more and put a little more effort into making sure that we're making the best decisions for humans and Earth, and I think that everything will be cool. I think everything will build off of truthful data, because it's all going to be so direct, and there's not going to be any points where it can be conceived in a different way. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just something you have to be aware of. And it's it could totally be looked at as a downside when it comes to the recording of data and the access that these big companies have to it and what they can monetize it as. We have a Google that monetizes our search habits, and when you search for a certain thing, it's going to say, hey, this company has paid to show this to you when you search for those exact words that you typed in. So here you go. That's an extremely powerful tool for business and marketing of commercial activity. And that's just, I think that as time goes on, that the big companies will find ways to monetize that data. And that's one of the biggest things that a lot of the data activists are for, is that people aren't able to monetize the data. But if that can create business activity, what harm is creating new industries? So, and all I'm saying is we can contribute this data from these types of products into this system, or perhaps we're contributing to a database that will eventually be used by a machine learning system that is able to learn about how we use stuff from the data that we've created. And I think that at some point that will be opened up to, we'll all kind of have a point of of access to it. Like if you wanted to start a business and you wanted to know, okay, how often do people leave their lights on when they leave their house? Maybe I want to make an app or a product that pays attention to if people are walking around in their house or not, and maybe I want to program algorithms to recommend when lights should turn off or simple stuff like that. Like all these types of things will be opened as little micro industries because of the data that's going to be available, and people are going to be able to create services that can serve consumers that meet certain variables. That's how it's been working on the internet for like the most successful parts of the internet. That's how they found their success and have continued and have grown their success. That's why Google and Facebook and Amazon are massive, So, yeah, that's just something it's not too hardcore of a downside. It's just something you have to be aware of, and I'm glad that I'm able to tell you guys that it's something that you can be aware of. Is the fact that all this data is recorded and stuff, and yeah, that's something that's going to be up to everyone's just personal preference. Like, is that something that you're okay with contributing to? Is that something that you're not comfortable with? And honestly, if you weren't comfortable with it, then there's probably other things that you're not comfortable with too, that already happened. And I'm not gonna drain into those too hardcore on this episode, but maybe we will soon. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to take into consideration in terms of the data that's being recorded, and I think that as long as you're doing that, as long as you understand that collecting data is a thing that is happening, if you're comfortable with moving forward with building your smart house and contributing to that data like reference point that we're creating, then there's nothing to worry about. But it's just something that you should know as you're getting into it. And it just so happened to make it onto the list of this part of the downsides of smart house. And it's on the downsides because maybe it gets weird. Technology can change in days. Technology can change. Policy could change, and stuff could affect how we use these products. I don't see anything like that in the near future that's too crazy that we need to worry about. But it's just one of those things. Big data, big tech. That's a thing in Congress. There's always a big tech company in a hearing doing something, saving themselves from what Congress thinks is bad. And usually it's just clarifying how the technology works to the folks that are listening, because it's a crazy, powerful world of tools, and they have to, stand there to protect it for themselves and protect the industry that they're a part of. And that's usually what they're doing in Congress. So there's usually always talk. And, you could always get on C-SPAN somewhere and probably find somebody talking about data and how it's being used and commercialized and monetized. So that's just one of those things that you got to pay attention to and understand when you're choosing companies that you're buying products from. Do you trust their what they're going to do with the data? Do you trust how they manage everything? Do you think that they're going to sell out and sell your information to somebody for whatever activity it is that they want to, that you may not be okay with? That's just something you have to research when you're buying from companies. So, ba-joom, boom, boom. That's most of it. I wonder how loud that clap is in those AirPods. I need to listen to this podcast on some AirPods. I haven't done that yet. I've only been doing it from some studio muffs. I'd be interested to see how good we're sounding on a podcast from Apple Podcasts. You should let me know. How's it sound? I'm kind of wasn't too focused on quality at the beginning. In terms of like pristine audio quality, I was just trying to get the content created and get it out there. And honestly, that's still the goal. If there's still an issue, I can try to tweak a couple little things for you guys and get it right. But yeah, content creation, getting out to you guys and showing you what's up with Smart House stuff and the technology about it. Number 4 is next after this series. Gonna talk about the pros. That's right, you get the negative out of the way first, and then you come slamming in hot with what is going to be cool about Smart House stuff. That's what the next episode is going to be about, probably later on this week. Cool stuff like that. My favorite part is when I'm always like talking, I'm going good, and then I just do that. I'm sure everybody's paying attention to that, for sure. But you know what? Content creation, that's what we're here for, my friends. Number 5. The last one of the introduction to the Smart Home series is going to be dedicated towards the types of products that I like personally, that I like to use, that I like to talk about, that I like to, I don't know, tell everybody to go buy. So I'm going to have some links in the description of episode 5 with all of my favorite products. I'm also going back through and making notes for each episode to where if I mentioned a product and you want to learn more about it, I'm including links where you can go learn more about it from like Amazon, and even have the opportunity to press the buy button. And yeah, it's super appreciated if people, when you go buy your products, if you're able to use my links. There's an extremely small amount of a percentage from your purchases. It's extremely small. I don't even know how small it is yet, but I know that it's small. That will go to me and will help support this podcast. We'll be able to make improvements with some of the gear and stuff, and get some more stuff here in the room so we can get multiple people talking at the same time and create a more entertaining environment to talk about technology and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to support the automated podcast, sharing it on the internet is the most powerful thing that can be done. And then of course below that is clicking on the links to the products that we talk about and checking those products out and supporting those products. That in turn supports the podcast. So yeah, thanks everybody for making it to the end of number 3. I'm super excited about the stuff that we're talking about, and being able to send out to the world. It means a lot to me to put this stuff out on the internet so people can reference. And you know, if there's certain failures that I did when I was building my smart house, and I can share those with people and, you know, tell my experience and make theirs better, then that's exactly the purpose of the podcast. So, yeah, thanks for making it to the end of number 3. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy what you're listening to, I would love and appreciate subscribes, shares, and reviews and all that creative stuff. And yeah, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Check the links. I think we should be searchable on Apple Podcasts now. You don't even have to have the special link. You should be able to search for it. Thanks everybody for your time. Thanks for making it to the end of number 3. I appreciate all the time that everybody else is putting into listening to this. Hopefully everybody's able to learn some pretty good material from the stuff that we're talking about. So, yeah, available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Tell your friends and family. If there's anybody getting any gifts this Christmas for Smart House stuff, let them know about the podcast, and maybe they can learn something and teach themselves something from it. So, yeah, thanks, everybody. I'm giving it a good old-fashioned Midwest goodbye right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up. We'll see you guys for number 4. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, everybody.